Welcome back to another edition of Eye on the Issues. Joining us right now is Representative Ben Hornok from the District 42 of in Wyoming. Ben, obviously, you just finished another legislative session, this being your first. I got to ask you, since you're a freshman, what was it like?
Well, I knew what to expect. I've actually been watching the legislative process for several years. I've been watching bills, tracking bills. I've testified a few times in committee and things. So I knew generally what to expect with the legislative process, but it was very interesting to essentially be on the floor, interact with everybody, see the conversations in the background, see what happens up front. To just watch that whole process was it was a good experience. It was really what I thought it would be. We've got to work pretty hard to keep Wyoming the way that it is, and a lot of good people there. It was very good to make some friends there. Really get to know some of the people there. A lot of great people in the legislative session, just generally. So it's interesting.
So let's talk about the measures that passed that you did not sponsor, for example. What do you think the biggest measures that they got through and did get passed that what do you think was the most important if you had to kind of pick three, for example?
So yeah, I've had a chance to go back through and look at, roughly about 200 bills passed this session. And honestly, I liked about 10 of them. So, but I think one of the really important ones was, we did something where we actually opened up the ability for people to homeschool, to develop co-ops within homes, bring other families into their co-op and homeschool kids together. I think that was really important. We passed the crossover bill, banning crossover voting, which I think we really have Liz Cheney to thank for that one. So she kind of was the power to push that one through. But we got it through finally. That's been something that I think they've been working on for quite a while. And then the ban on chemical abortions. Being the first state in the country that has banned chemical abortions, I think that was a good precedence to set that hopefully other states will take that mantle up and run with it as well. So as far as top three, I think, yeah, those are good bills.
All good bills. Let's talk about what you sponsored and tell us how those measures did. Let's begin with HB 220, for example, prohibiting pornography in schools. Talk to me about the goal of the bill and then what happened with it.
Well, the goal of that bill is just generally outright to ban pornography in schools. We do have a problem in schools. It's very interesting. I learned recently that the school Wi-Fi system has a block on pornography, and then the kids get on the school bus and there's no block on the internet service on the Wi-Fi in the school buses, so the kids can kind of download anything they want to. So my bill would have outright banned pornography in schools and defined pornography and what that is. It went to the Education Committee about 2 weeks before the cutoff date, and then it was never heard in the Education Committee. So the finish line came and went, and that bill died, essentially not having been heard. But that was one of several bills along those lines. So, we were working on several at the time. Unfortunately, that's one of the things that happened this legislative session is none of those good bills got passed. So that is a problem, and we need to keep working on that in the future.
Yeah, I did hear about a number of bills that didn't make it out of the speaker's desk. Okay, let's go to HB 257. It had to do with mine permits. Tell us about that measure, the goal, and what happened to it.
Well, I had a constituent in my district give me a phone call, and he said, "Hey, this is going on, and can you help me?" And as I dug into it, what tends to happen in Wyoming is the mine and the EPA in Wyoming can make minor changes, minor adjustments to a reclamation permit. So you can have a reclamation permit that the landowner signed onto, and the landowner has to have buy-in for that reclamation permit. You can have a permit that the landowner signed onto years and years ago, but throughout the course of the process, the mine and the state agency can make minor changes to that reclamation permit without the landowner's buy-in. I just think it's something that the landowner also needs to be a part of that conversation. And so essentially, if there are, the definition of a minor change is not there, and how many minor changes can you make in the course of years that add up to be a major change where the landowner, the land he's left with, he can't even raise cows on it anymore. So that could be a potential issue. I'd like to just insert the landowner to have buy-in anytime a reclamation permit is changed, even in a minor way. And I don't think that's really that difficult. That's not going to hamstring that process, because the landowner wants to. He has, he wants the mine to continue. But he needs to have buy-in on what he's left with.
So what happened with that measure?
Nothing. It never came out of the speaker's desk. Yeah.
Okay. Let's jump to HB 265, having to do with late payments.
So this is something, if I'm late on a credit card payment, they charge me 28%. They charge me an ungodly amount on my late payment. If the state, so usually the state goes through their procurement process, and some vendor hands an invoice to the state to be paid for what they did. Per state statute, the state has 45 days to pay that invoice. If they pay beyond the 45 days, they're assessed they could be assessed a 1.5% interest charge on that particular payment. I've seen it before. I've actually had some personal things as well, where I mean, you're talking some of those payments that say there's a large construction project, and the contractor submits an invoice for work he did 1 month. He submits the invoice the next month, and then he still has to wait another month and a half to get paid for the work that he did 2 or 3 months ago. And we've got construction projects right now that are in the 20, 30, $50 million range. Every monthly invoice is a giant invoice. It really affects the contractor's bottom line, and then everybody has to wait till the contractor gets paid to get their payment. So, incentivizing the state to pay their bills in a timely manner. It's just jumping that interest from 1.5% up to 5%, which I thought was fairly reasonable. Hopefully, it will never happen that the state's assess a 5% late charge from the vendor once they submit an invoice. But if it does happen, it will probably only happen once. So that's really the point. And the state already has those funds set aside. It's just a matter of that invoice working its way across several people's desks to be paid. And I think that process is something that because of the businesses that rely on those payments, it's something that really needs to be focused on. Somebody can't go on vacation for a month and leave their invoice, multi-million-dollar invoice, sitting on their desk for a month. So, that's an extreme example. That's not going to happen. But just to avoid those situations.
And was anything done with it? Did it move through or not?
No, that one sat in the speaker's drawer as well.
Okay.
Never ended.
Right. All right. 274, HB 274, having to do with internet freedom. Tell me about that one.
So this bill was something that was run a couple of years ago. This bill, I had somebody approach me and say, "Do you want to run this bill?" And I said, "Sure, I'm perfectly happy to do that." This bill would have allowed a citizen in the state of Wyoming who is essentially canceled or has their social media post pulled down from a major social media site, they could have sued that social media company. Or you could get a class action lawsuit with several people throughout the state of Wyoming, essentially. So it just creates a little bit of a roadblock to a social media company that is taking down posts. Now, when that bill was originally run, what's very interesting is we all thought that it was the social media companies that were targeting individuals, and since then we've learned through the Twitter files that it's actually mainly the federal government that has targeted certain individuals. So this bill would have put the social media companies in, between a rock and a hard place where they would have had to decide, well, do I do what these government officials are telling me to do and cancel this person, take this post down, or and if I do that, I risk being sued by this person in the state of Wyoming. So it would have really, I think, created a situation where the social media companies would have had to think twice about what they're doing. And I think it would have been, let's start here in Wyoming. Let's see where it goes in other states. I think there's still, we still have to do something to protect our online speech. The First Amendment that we have, this online speech is a new thing. Our founders didn't foresee this kind of thing happening. So we've got to figure out what the First Amendment means when it comes to internet protection of our free speech.
Very good point. All right, let's jump to the vote that
come out of the desk either, by the way.
Wait, go again. Say that again.
That one didn't come out of the speaker's desk either. So
okay. Let's put it this way. I think he had a full drawer.
Yeah.
All right, so let's jump to the decriminalization vote that took place at the Cheyenne City Council meeting, and I know you spoke there. What was your message?
So essentially, what the city of Cheyenne tried to do was they tried to decriminalize marijuana in the city, so that the city, if somebody was caught with some marijuana, the city wouldn't press charges. The city essentially wouldn't do anything about it, which that's called decriminalization, but it's basically legalizing marijuana in the city and within the city bounds. And that's the issue that I had is my testimony was I don't think that a municipality that is a subsection, a political subdivision of the state of Wyoming has the right to decriminalize something that is otherwise illegal throughout the state, because what will happen in that situation is it will create a special class of citizens for the individuals within the boundary of that city. And per our Wyoming Constitution, we're not allowed to discriminate. We're not allowed to have a special class of citizens that are where it's legal, essentially legal for them to do something, whereas if they step outside of the boundary of the city, it would be illegal within the state of Wyoming. So that was more my testimony. It's just that this is a constitutional problem that we're running into, where if you decriminalize it in one little place in the state of Wyoming, you're creating that special class of citizen. And I don't think the cities, any political subdivision can really do that until the state at the legislative level or federally at the national level, something is done with the definition of with what's allowable with the marijuana.
And how was your message received?
Well, I think fairly well. I think they understood there were some constitutional, they were walking on thin ice constitutionally. And so I think that message, along with some other nuances of it, where technically the city of Cheyenne is still within Laramie County. It's still illegal within Laramie County. So anybody caught with, say, a joint would have then been charged at the county level and not just the city level. So it would still sort of be illegal, sort of be legal. So it was just this weird kind of nuance. So, I think my the constitutionality aspect to it was half of the reason why they sort of shied away from it. The other half was it was really going to get confusing with what was legal, what was illegal at so the city council kind of just backed off of the issue and it didn't pass.
Now, do you think that's a one-off where the city of Cheyenne has gone forward to try to do that? Or do you think we're going to see other cities or municipalities or towns around Wyoming trying to do the same?
Well, I would hope that one of the reasons why I testified was because it was the first situation that I've heard of in the state of Wyoming where that has happened at the municipal level. And so because it was happening in the biggest city in Wyoming, if it would have gone through, it would have really set a essentially why I testified is either way it would have set a precedence. So whether it would have gone through, whether it wouldn't have gone through, it kind of would have set a precedence for every other municipality. And so I think that because the city of Cheyenne really backed off of this, I hope that that's the precedence that other municipalities kind of look through and they back off of it before it even gets to a resolution that comes before the city council right now. It is something that will be dealt with on the legislative level. It's come up multiple times in the years past. So I think that that's where it really needs to be dealt with.
And speaking on the legislative level, obviously your neighbor to the south, Colorado, has had marijuana legalized both recreationally and medicinally for probably over a decade now. And while some people might say that's great, a lot of others, especially law enforcement officers and medical professionals in Wyoming, are having a real tough time with the strength of the marijuana and the fallout, what's happening to younger Coloradans. What are your thoughts about keeping marijuana from being legalized in Wyoming?
Well, I'm of the opinion that I'd like to not see it legalized in the state of Wyoming. And, there's a lot of reasons of, there's a pro and con for all of this stuff. However, I look at it this way. I think, every state is dealing with this legalization issue on some level, across the board or just medical or, what it leads to, like within the, like Portland and Seattle, where all drugs are essentially decriminalized. The reason why I want to see marijuana kept out of the state of Wyoming is just because what would happen if every state legalized marijuana on some level, but Wyoming did not? Who would Wyoming attract? What kind of businesses would Wyoming attract? We would attract families that did not want to raise kids around that environment. We would attract businesses that wanted to start their business and keep their business in a state where they didn't have to deal with that kind of thing with their employees. So, I really think that you hear a lot of, now that's a Wyoming solution for a Wyoming problem right there, because you hear a lot about people saying, well, everybody else is doing it. All these other states are doing it. But to me, that's a terrible reason to enact legislation on any level, just because some other state does it. We have an incredibly unique situation in the state of Wyoming. We have a population that is Um, the size of the first city you come to headed south out of I-20, down I-25 out of Wyoming. So the entire population of the state of Wyoming, is small. We have a giant energy sector. 40% of America's energy comes from Wyoming. We have this incredibly unique situation in the state of Wyoming. So I think that we need to tailor legislation. We need to think about doing things for the state of Wyoming, not just because, well, Colorado did it and now we have to deal with it. So I just think that what happens if Wyoming does not legalize marijuana, that's the kind of place that I would want to live, because I don't want to deal with that stuff. I don't want to have to hire employees where I have to thread the needle on that kind of stuff. So anyway, that's just what I would like to see in the state of Wyoming. So I'm going to fight the legalization of marijuana at every chance I can.
Are there any topics that I have not brought up that you would like to chime in on?
Well, I'll just put it this way. I've heard a lot of, I'll talk about the legislative session generally. I've heard some people talk a lot about that it was kind of the term's been used a mixed bag, or, there's been good things, there's been bad things that have come out of the legislative session. I really think that it was like watching a slow train wreck in Ohio. I just think that it was, if you look at the bills, you look at the ones that did pass, and then you look at the ones that didn't pass. To me, there are more on the list of things that didn't pass this session that should have. And that's the problem, is we can do a lot of good in Wyoming. We can focus on a lot of good in Wyoming. The federal government is trying to cram down some things with green energy and the kind of cars that you can buy or whatever that is. We need to work hard now to start putting up roadblocks to those federal government overreach items within the state of Wyoming. We can be unique in the state of Wyoming, and we're just not going that direction. So there's things that we could have done that way that we just didn't deal with, because nobody wants to risk losing federal funds. Nobody wants to step on the federal government's toes and risk that, which I think is just ridiculous. We've got to go that direction. We didn't do anything. Well, we hardly did anything with the property tax issue. There were 15 plus good property tax bills, and we passed the worst, most meaningless ones of all. So there's things that we did within the legislative session this year. We didn't do anything to ban pornography in schools. We hardly did anything to help our Second Amendment gun rights. We hardly did anything with property tax. We didn't do anything with stopping the federal government overreach, what we've seen during the COVID pandemic. We didn't protect parental rights in education. We didn't do so many things in this legislative session. And those bills were out there. And that was the problem. Those bills were out there. They were good bills. Some bills that did go through, unfortunately, got tweaked a little bit, like the abortion, banning abortion bill. It got tweaked a little bit. And what was funny was, there were some really great things that came out of that bill in particular, but the Democrats also ran a bill banning abortion that had the ability for abortions for incest and rape and the life of the mother type of thing. So essentially, what we got out of that was we got the Democrat bill in the end. And so, things that happened during that legislative process, just in general that way, I really, we've got to keep fighting. We've got to keep our head down and work hard at this stuff to pass really good legislation, to pass things that block the federal government, to pass things that give parents the rights over their kids, over the way their kids are educated. All of those items. I just think that we've got to do a lot, and it does take several years sometimes to pass a bill, and we got to keep working at it. So anyway, it was a very interesting legislative session that way, and I hope that more can be accomplished in the years ahead.
No doubt. And let me finish with this question. What do you like most about living in the state of Wyoming?
Well, with spring coming, I could say when summer's on its way, that's one thing. But when I was on the campaign trail, the thing that made me the most nervous was getting out there and knocking on doors. I'm in a very rural community. Most of my houses, I have to drive from driveway to driveway, because I knock on a few houses, very few houses if I were walking. And, so you take the dog treats in your pocket as well, because the dogs come up and they're usually the first ones to greet you. So that made me the most nervous. What do? You knock on a door and it's a complete stranger. But as I began, after the first day knocking on doors, it blew me away. The people that I've met along the way, the people that are out here that have moved to this state over the years for a reason. There's some fascinating people. I met such good people as I was out there on the campaign trail, and just so highly motivated you to work for them, to work for their rights, to work for their freedom. And that was a unique opportunity. And, I'm looking forward to doing it again. I'm looking forward to meeting even more people. And so, like I said earlier, I mean, we have a very small population, so you can get to know a lot of the population here in Wyoming. And most of the population that I run into are just phenomenal people, just very interesting people when you talk to them and you get to know their stories. So, that's what I really enjoy about the state of Wyoming. The amount of people that you can actually really just get to know, and the quality of individuals that are here in the state of Wyoming. I mean, you've got to be pretty strong in order to endure 9 months of snowy winter, and stay and love it here. So those are the strong people that, I really enjoy representing. I really enjoy meeting, and that are just the backbone of the state of Wyoming. And we can't lose that. We can't lose that. We've got to fight pretty hard for that. So I'm willing to keep fighting. And, that's what's, I think, the gem in Wyoming is the people.
Ben, thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.